Brandon, how long have you been director of community theater here?
Technically, this is my first year as the artistic director. However, last year and during our kind of hiatus year when the pandemic was happening, I was a volunteer director.
Okay.
And I went in and directed 3 shows during that time. So that was my introduction to directing at Camille. And then this August, I was hired as the artistic director.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But there had been a director before, right? Or was it? You're in a paid position, right?
Yes.
And so has it always been voluntary, or have they generally had a paid director for the theater?
Normally it is the paid position, and back when I first got there, we had a artistic director who was in charge of everything. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to release staff and everything like that. And when we started coming back, there was no official position filled. So there were different volunteer directors that came in and did 1 or 2 shows in the season.
Okay.
And then this year, for our 59th season, we hired the director.
Wow, the 59th season.
Yes.
My goodness, I didn't realize you'd been around that long. I mean, I know you go way back, but I didn't know it went that far back. In fact, how did it get started, the theater?
Well, from what I know and from what I've been told since I've been there is the theater was built for Camille Leitner. And when she passed, they built, or maybe before she passed, they built it for her since she loved the theater. And Camille Leitner is the sister to Gladys Porter, who is, Gladys Porter Zoo Park, which is where our building is. And they were sisters, and they loved doing everything together and, all these sorts of entertainment facets. And their father, which is Earl Sams, like Sam Stadium and everything like that, he was the one who put it together to get the theater built. And that was 60,
in the
maybe?
60s, okay.
Because I know our first season was 64. So, yeah.
And Sam's made his money with Sears, is that right? As I recall, his fortune.
Yes, that sounds about right.
It was generated in his work for Sears and owning Sears stock, and so I'll check on that to make sure that's right. But that's what I understand, that his fortune was came from his involvement in with Sears, Roebuck and Company, and so so that fortune has been very fortunate for Brownsville. They built some of the fine institutions that dominate the city and give us a quality of life we might not have otherwise. But why don't you tell us about the community theater? What are the major misunderstandings that the average person has about community theater? What do they not know? Well,
I know there's very few facets or ways that people can get exposure to it without actually going to the theater, and a lot of what people see in media or just TV shows, movies, is that community theater is just not as professional as a professional theater or semi-professional, and a lot of people get the misunderstanding that it is not that caliber. And what we like to do, and what a lot of the community theaters in the Valley like to do, is promote that professionalism and hire people to run the music and make it as professional and as coordinated and as well as it can be to provide this sort of entertainment for the Valley. And I keep saying the Valley, or the area, because I know that we have a community theater in Harlingen, Weslaco, a couple in McAllen, one on the island, and all of them are promoting and producing all this great performance art. However, the Camille is the oldest of all of them, and actually we are the oldest established community theater south of San Antonio.
Wow, that's a nice record.
Yeah, it's been a while. They've been doing very, very, very well.
Are community theaters on the rise around the country? Are they solid, so to speak? Are they surviving well, or is it a struggle?
I think now we're coming back. I know during the pandemic it was hard to get people into buildings and people working together, but as things become safer and we understand how to create those barriers and that safety net, everything is coming back. I know that there's professional theaters, outdoor theaters, community theaters are on the rise and really becoming established again now that we feel more safe, ready to put things out there.
A few years ago, maybe a decade or more ago, they used to do, and I don't know, maybe they still do it, they used to do Shakespeare in the Park in McAllen. But, down here it's so hot.
Correct.
that, it's so hard to get an audience out to watch Shakespeare in the Park at 98 degrees. Mm-hmm. And so I think they struggled to make that successful. But I do like that they try, that these organizations say, let's try something new, something that is tested in other places, and let's see if we can't develop an audience for it. Mm-hmm. What would you like to do that would be unusual for us?
Well, one thing I have considered is outdoor theater. Mm-hmm. A couple years ago, I worked in a professional theater in Canyon, Texas, right next to Amarillo.
Yeah.
They have an outdoor theater, and I was part of their performance company. So I got to do that, and I saw how the natural lighting and everything can help put the show together, and it was incredible. And I think that's something, but as you said, with the weather, especially where we're located, it's kind of hard to do.
But was that the pageant they have up there in Canyon? Isn't it Canyon where they have the Texas?
Yes, Texas, the outdoor musical. Yeah.
But was that what you were working on? Yes.
Yeah, I was in that for a summer. It's the same show. We did it 68 times in a summer.
And you have horses and everything, right?
Horses, fireworks, explosives, just a crazy amount of things. Something I don't know if we have enough space for here, but the idea of just integrating the environment and the natural aspect of where you were placed into the show is incredible. And I know we have attempted that. A couple years ago, we did A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare comedy, outside of our theater. We have a couple of trees, and it provided a nice shady area, and it was beautiful. It was incredible. So something like that would be fun to try to integrate again.
Over here at Lincoln Park by the university, they built in a large hill that could be used as a theater. I've actually thought of that Texas pageant up there in Canyon in relation to us, because I saw that when I was a kid, and I was very impressed with the fact that they had horses in the play and music and all that. It was it's a grand pageant. And I've thought of that often. I said, we have an interesting history here, and we have horses.
Yeah.
So we could do something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there's multiple across the country. There's one in El Paso also, I think. And some of the bigger ones are in Medora, North Dakota. There's the Lost Colony, the Carolinas, just a lot of historical shows linked to the location that they're in. And like you said, we do have an incredible amount of history that can be put into a visual performance.
Sure.
So
yeah, we could. Maybe someday in the distant future they can have one for the Elon Musk enterprises out to tell the story of the rockets.
Yeah, definitely.
Who decides what plays you will do? Do you decide?
This year, yes, the artistic director is the one who produces a lineup for the season, and that will be put to the board of directors who are part of the organization, and they will have input if this show works, or maybe we should substitute this one, and kind of go back and forth. Ultimately, the artistic director is the one who puts it together. Our season before, because there was no one in the position, we had a committee who all brought in different shows, and we kind of lined it up and then told the board this was our idea, and then they decided and then got in the volunteer directors.
What are the criteria by which you determine a show is feasible or not feasible? Do you say that's, given our theater, we couldn't do that, or given our finances, we can't do that? What determines which shows you can choose?
The first thing is the accessibility that we have to the show. Every time that we do one, we have to apply to be able to do it. And there are certain shows that community theaters cannot do they're only allowed in professional or semi-professional theaters.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Some of the bigger shows that require, bigger sets and bigger.
And who decides that? The playwright or the agency that represents the playwright?
I believe it's the agency. We work a lot with MTI, the Music Theater Corporation, Concord Theatricals, and they will list it under the community theater availability. Okay. So we'll do that.
But you can do ancient Greek theater without any permission, right?
Correct.
There's got to be some stuff.
Yeah, if there is, if it is public domain, which is after 50 years, I believe, or between 50 and 60 years after the composer or playwright has passed, their publications become public domain. So there is no company that it goes through. So yes, it is free to be able to put on those productions, which we have one of them in our lineup for this season.
What do you have on your lineup for this season? Let's talk about that.
I'm glad you asked. I have it here, so I know I picked them all.
It's a great looking poster.
Thank you. So we're opening with Pippin, which is a Stephen Schwartz musical, which is the person who wrote Wicked, Godspell, a bunch of big shows, and it is incredible. It's set in a circus, so it's a lot of fantastical things and magic tricks and all sorts of craziness about this boy Pippin and his life. Second is a play. So we like to alternate between musicals and plays through our season. That's another thing that we consider when putting it all together.
Do you have a particular genre that does really well all the time? You say, we do that, it'll bring in the crowd.
Yeah, I think the bigger named musicals do very, very well. I know, this December we're doing The Sound of Music. And I know just the name will pull people in to come see it. So, big things like that we've done.
Do you have the vocal talent locally to do that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you do?
Yes, that's one of the few things that from how I got my education and working at the university and just with the people around here, I've learned that the level of vocal talent in the Valley is incredible. And we have, even in Pippin, the vocal quality is so grand. It's equals or even betters when I was working professionally with different groups. It is so good.
That's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Quite remarkable.
So after Pippin, we have our first play, which is called Mojada, a Medea in Los Angeles, which is actually the retelling of Euripides' Medea. Yeah. So, but retold as immigrants who just moved into Los Angeles.
How interesting.
And yes, it is a modern take on it, and it can be very familiar to people in our community and everything like that. So I'm very excited for them to see our representation in a show on our stage.
Are you going to direct all of these?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a job.
Yeah, that's the position that's the biggest thing. Is just,
so you do the auditions, and you choose the talent, and you put them in their roles, right? Big job.
Yeah. Each show I try to get a team to assist with. For the musicals, I'll hire a music director or a choreographer if needed. Sometimes a stage manager to just help keep everything in line. But ultimately, it is me who is putting all the things onto the stage.
Do you get university assistants? Do you get talent from the university? Music, singing, etc.?
Yes, definitely. A lot of our orchestra members, if we ever have live musicians, are students from the university. Our last music director is a voice professor at the university, Dr. Shayna Isaacs, and she was able to help put all of that together.
So it truly is community theater.
Yeah, definitely. And we've worked with the different other community theaters as well, if they have pieces or things that we can utilize and help put our things together. So it's a full community project.
If I want to be in a play, what do I do?
Well, the first thing would be check our website because we will include the stipulations for each audition. Just because musicals are going to be asking things different than just straight plays.
Yes.
But most things is just preparing either like roughly a minute of a song for musicals, or reading part of the script for some of the plays. And it is just kind of like a walk-in, meet the team, me included, just feel comfortable and have a nice quick audition, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I would definitely never make a musical. I just don't have it. People won't stay where I'm singing. So I was once watching the play. Well, it was made into a movie, Paint Your Wagon, and Lee Marvin was in the film, and he had a wonderful speaking voice, but you couldn't imagine him singing. But I don't know if the play was written with him in mind or if they just made a song for people who can't sing. But it worked beautifully. He had a song, and he sang it wonderfully in his grovelly, slightly out of tune voice. It fit the character, and that's always stuck with me. That here was a play where they, I think, on purpose put in a song that was for someone who wasn't a singer, but his style would bring it to life and make it real. So it was great.
Yeah.
But that's the only song I think I could ever do is that one. That's for someone who can't sing. So go on with your schedule. What else do we have?
So after Mojada, we have The Sound of Music, which is around Christmas time.
Perfect.
So Rodgers and Hammerstein, big. I'm very excited to get all the children as well in that one. We're going to need. Then in the new year, we have Spider's Web, which is an Agatha Christie murder mystery.
Oh, good.
And it's all secret doors and moving bookcases, and it's incredible.
It's going to be a real challenge for your set designer.
Oh, yes, definitely. But we've already, surprisingly enough, we have already discussed every single set for this season.
You must.
And just how that'll all work.
And then in March, what do you have?
March is our next musical, or actually our last musical, is called Songs for a New World. It is by Jason Robert Brown, and it is actually probably what I would say between a musical and a song cycle. And that just means that there's no dialogue, there's no talking, there's very limited dancing, and it's all different stories put together with the same theme about one pivotal moment in someone's life. So it goes from like the modern Chicago to the ships coming over to the New World to Mrs. Claus talking about Santa and when he's gone. Just all these different stories, but focusing on the idea that there's one pivotal moment in people's lives that kind of put us together. And that actually only has a cast of 4 people.
Only 4? Oh, okay.
So it's just 4 very strong singers and a couple of instruments. But it is a beautiful, beautiful story that I'm ready to see on stage.
And then you do, my goodness, you're doing like one a month.
Yeah, the second half of
that?
our second half of our season is pretty quick. But yeah, our next is our William Shakespeare, As You Like It, which is a comedy. It's all about love at first sight and all this craziness that happens when you think you love someone, you think you're looking at the person you love, and there's costume changes and disguises and just craziness.
It's a lot of fun, yes.
Yeah. And then we close off with a show that has a much too long title, and I wish I could cut it down, but they have the right to do that. It's called Dorothy Meets Alice or The Wizard of Wonderland. And this is our youth theater production. Okay. So it's for auditioners, performers from ages 14 to 19, roughly, that age group. And it talks about this boy who is procrastinating on his book report. So he's reading these 2 books and then gets thrown into a world between the 2. So he's helping out...
Oh, clever.
He's helping out the White Rabbit and the Scarecrow while also evading the Red Queen and the Wicked Witch of the West. So it is a crazy mashup of the shows, and it is going to be so fun to put together.
Have you ever done a play in Spanish?
Yes, yeah. We actually did, a couple of years ago, we did Othello. So, Othello, but just fully in Spanish. We've done a couple of shows that have been dual language. Mojada is actually one that has a couple of Spanish scenes in it. But yes, we like to offer that opportunity for people who may not have English as their first language to still be engrossed and put fully into our productions.
Great. Well, I think the thing that keeps a lot of people from trying out is just that they feel like they're not ready. They're not quite good enough to do this yet. And you give them a lot of help, right? A lot of coaching. You don't necessarily have to have everybody come with a professional pedigree or even great experience. If they fit the role and they have reasonable talent, you
definitely
can work with them.
Yeah, and a lot of, from like even what I've learned for my personal performance growth is that there kind of is the, like, not a hierarchy, but just like a stepping process when performing. It's not like you're going to walk in and become the main actress right away. Sometimes you do. Sometimes people have this raw talent and raw engagement with people, and that helps on the stage. But a lot of people will start by being part of the ensemble or part of the background characters who are building the story, and then they'll become a supporting performer, then a leading performer. And just that gaining of confidence and just understanding of how the process works helps them build up to those roles.
Well, you've coached and you've directed a lot, and you've coached actors and actresses. Oh, they're all called actors now, right? What is it that you say to someone to make them a better actor? What's the kind of typical coaching you do where you see someone that's beginning, so to speak, and they're trying to get better at this art form? What are some of the things that's typically done poorly that you try to correct with what sorts of advice?
One of the biggest things personally that I know as a director I kind of pinpoint on is I will really notice when people are fake acting. They're over-exaggerating things that don't need to be exaggerated, and people think that that's acting. And what we like to do is really kind of break it down to a more personal acting style, where it's just kind of you as a person. What I would tell someone is, you as a person, how would you respond to this interaction? And then from there, cater it so that the audience sees what's going on. Sometimes some subtle things that we would do aren't going to be seen on stage. So you do have to exaggerate a little bit. But when it becomes too much, then it becomes that schmackty fake acting. Oh, I can tell they're just overdoing it, versus someone who can be personable and really get people to focus in on what they're doing.
It reminds me of a saying that is appropriate for many art forms, is that if your technique is showing, you're not doing it right. If I can see you acting, if I can hear you acting, I think something that is a prominent kind of weakness that I personally see, although I haven't really directed plays, but I still see it, and they talk too fast. So there are times where the character needs to speak quickly, of course, but I'm just talking about the average person starting out will speak too fast, and so then they're just saying words but not meaning words, and you can't make sense of what they're saying because they're speaking too fast and articulation is poor and there's no animation in the words. And so anyway, that's just one of the things that I see. You work with kids in the summertime, and that's a wonderful program. You have, this past summer, how many children did you have in the children's, it's the Children's Theater Workshop? What do you call it?
It is our summer youth workshop.
Okay.
I think that's how we like to label it. But we had about 70 kids this summer.
That's huge.
Which we are very, very thankful for. I think last year, post-pandemic, last year was our first year to do it, and we had maybe 40, maybe if that. So we almost doubled this year, which is incredible. And I know before there used to be maybe well over 100 kids in the summer.
Yeah, but you did two shows. You had a show for the older kids and the younger kids?
Yes, and we did that twice. So there's a June session, and it's split up into two shows, and then a July session, which is 2 shows. So over those 4 total performances, we had 70 kids.
And this, the tuition for this program helps fund the theater?
Yes, yeah. The way that as a nonprofit, we do not get a lot of assistance.
Yes.
And a lot of our capability to do everything that we want in the summer and in our season is through our summer workshop tuition, as well as any grants or anything that we apply for and receive. But yes, from what I was talking to our financial person about was for this year, all of the tuition from the summer was able to pay for the rights to do all of our shows this season.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
So that I'm very excited that this has been covered. Of course, that doesn't include any new materials we buy for the set, any musicians we hire, all of that will come from
But it's a great
sales.
start.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great start.
But yes.
And then the ticket sales obviously help fund them.
Yeah.
But where else do you get funding from? Does the city give you any money?
They assist, not directly through, donations, but I know that where our facility is located, they handle our lighting and our water on our facility.
Oh, nice.
But a lot of it comes from either donations, grants, our season tickets that we sell, is a big way that we raise money to make sure that we can get everything done.
What kind of grants do you get? Where do they come from?
We had the one from the Tijerina Foundation to help us. The Camille family, the Leitner family, has something that helps us. I'm trying to think of. I know we've applied for some of the ones that are performance or arts related in the city,
like the Texas Commission on the Arts or something like that. They don't give huge grants, but they are helpful.
Yeah, but any amount helps.
Sure, sure.
So, but yeah, just little things like that. I don't know how far we've gone reaching out to like national ones that are for these theaters, because we in the grand scheme of things, we're not a huge theater. We're a very well established one in South Texas. But there are some theaters that we hold about 300 seats, and there's some that do 500, 1,000. There's high schools up the valley that hold more than us, So,
if you could, I like to ask this question to many people who come in to talk on Brownsville Matters. I give you $20 million. What would you do with it to make a better theater program?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is It's hard to get some people into our doors just because of the accessibility, the price of the tickets, the location, and everything like that. And that's something that if we had the accessibility to do, I would love to be able to either give tickets, to help supplement that money, or lower the ticket prices to get more people in. And then that would be step one, and then step two would be...
So you would build a bigger theater?
Well, either that or just make it more available to people.
Make more available.
Yeah.
Can you not use the TSC theater?
I'm not sure. I know that there's a lot of events that happen there, and the procuring of that space takes a long time in advance. But our space is perfect for what we do. We just, if in time we do sell out all of our shows, then we will have to think about some sort of expansion or...
I was surprised when I was there at how far back it goes. That you have the theater itself takes up about 1/3 of the space of the facility. Then you have the stage, and then behind that you still have quite a bit of space. I know you probably think that you don't have enough, but for my first time in there, I was surprised at how much space you did have.
Yep, and that's something that I know, like even my mother, who has been taking me to Camille, since I was in middle school, but she helped build or paint one of the sets this summer, and she came in and she also saw that backstage area with all the costumes and everything, and was just blown away. And you don't think about it when you look at the outside of the building, but then when you're in there, just seeing how much space is utilized by our set pieces and our staircases, and costumes and all those little things back there.
If people have older clothes, let's say from 1920s or 30s or something, can you benefit from those, or is it just kind of too difficult to store it all?
No, we take in donations any place we can. There was recently a laundromat that closed in Matamoros, one of the oldest ones there, and they had to close down, and they brought in racks of tuxedos and tuxedo shirts and everything like that, and we were able to take them in and hopefully utilize them in one of our upcoming productions.
Oh, you mean like dry cleaners? Yeah, because a laundromat was, people just go and wash their clothes.
Oh yeah, I guess it was.
So I was thinking they left their clothes, all those tuxedos just left. That's very cool. Very nice to have that. I remember years ago when I was over at Pan Am, and the old Pan Am, and I went into the costume area there, and it was rather phenomenal. They had minks, and they had a lot of clothes that were really kind of valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the minks, when they were new, were worth thousands, and it's just not very popular to wear minks anymore, but people donated them, and so they had quite a collection of period-oriented costumes. And that's important. When you watch, for instance, an older film, one of the things that makes it fascinating is the authenticity of the costumes that are appropriate for the period and look new.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the big reasons why we have such a large costume area is we have an idea of what shows we're going to do, but each season there could be something that we need historical, accurate time period pieces. And if we just have them there and kept in good condition, then we don't have to rent them. We don't have to go out and buy them. We already have them in our system.
Do you have people who make costumes for you?
Actually, this show in particular, one of my good friends who I met in elementary school, and then she went off and got her degree in costuming and everything, came back to Brownsville, and her name is Souther Recio, and she is helping design, create, and do everything for this show. And also my little sister actually has helped create some pieces for us.
So you can be involved in many, many ways. You can be in set design, or you can be in costuming, lighting, music. You can be the ancillary participation around the production is quite varied.
Exactly, yeah. And I think for some shows that team is bigger than the cast. Sometimes you will have, definitely for some of our shows this season, but right now I think we have about a cast of 21 people, and then backstage helping with lights, sound, the flies, or everything that's going in and out and coming up and down, or helping backstage is maybe about 15. So it's just about the same size as our cast.
What's one of the funnier things that's ever happened? All plays have problems or moments where things don't go right, and sometimes it becomes a good moment. But anyway, it's something that's happened that's been where you had kind of your oh no moment. And
I think one of the ones that will always live in my mind is something incredible. We were doing a production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show a couple years ago, and we were using microphones. We had a live band down in the pit, and they had a speaker that would hear whatever was going on stage. And so they would hear our line, and they knew it was time to play. And there was one time that the microphone turned off. We have no idea what happened, but the main girl's mic turned off, and she had to say a line to get the musicians to play. And so everyone was talking normally, and then she just yelled out that line out of nowhere to make sure that the band heard it, and it was so funny.
I heard of a play once where there was a guy who was a guy had a gun on the stage, and he just had it for effect, to threaten somebody. But the gun, of course, was a cap gun. But anyway, the gun went off and shot the guy in front of him. And for the purposes of the play, the guy had to fall down because, this wasn't supposed to happen, but he was clearly shot.
Yeah.
So he had to respond, and he fell on the stage, and he lays down the actress, quick thinking. She says, "Wait, maybe he's not dead. And she goes and listens to his heart and says, yes, I think he's okay.
Yep, you got to keep going. Acting is reacting, and everything. But if something bad happens, all you can do is keep going.
What play would you most like to do or to direct? What would you just love to do if you could?
My favorite musical of all time is one called, another long title, Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. And it is a musical based on 100 pages of War and Peace. So,
well, you don't think of War and Peace as a musical.
No, not at all. But they were able to take that little section of that book and expand it into this beautiful, beautiful story of Russian life and everything like that. And it is something I would love to direct and even be part of. But that is one that is not able to be done in a community theater, just the size and the grandeur and the budget that is needed for it. But that is one that I've always wanted to do. Or another musical called Come From Away, which talks about 9/11, when the airspace was closed and all of the planes had to be grounded in Newfoundland. And there's a musical based on those 6 days when everyone was grounded, and just how a small community of a couple thousand people turned into this huge haven for people when there was all this unknown chaos that was going on just a couple of states away.
I remember that happening, but I had no idea there was a musical. Man, they can make a musical about anything.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And it's the power that music has to translate the emotional turmoil that those people felt, and just the way that music can add to any sort of emotion is crazy. We've heard a lot of Hamilton that has happened recently by Lin-Manuel, and just being able to tell mostly historical things, and adding that musical aspect and how it just amplifies that emotion is incredible.
What about something like, I don't even know if this is a play, but the movie like Coco, that it's a musical, it's a movie, but was it first a play?
I don't think so. There are a couple of Disney movies that then become musicals,
right?
Set specifically for the stage, but not all of them turn into that.
But if it were a Disney, I mean, it is a Disney production, and if you could do it, you'd have to pay a fortune to be able to do it, right?
Yes, yeah. We've done a couple of Disney shows. We did Beauty and the Beast not too long ago, and that one takes a lot.
How much do you have to pay? How much is it? Just a ballpark? Is it $2,000, $5,000? What does it cost to get the rights?
I cannot remember when we did the Beauty and the Beast how different it was, but for example, the way that it's based is how many times you are doing the show and how big your audience is. So how many seats you have in your theater. So I think for our musicals, they are about $5,000 for our space.
Wow. Where did you go to school?
I'm from Brownsville.
You're from Brownsville?
Yeah, born and raised. I went to Pace, and that's where I started my musical theater and just vocal training, and then I went to the university. Started when it was, I think it was the year that it became UTB on its own,
right.
And then UTRGV.
But were you in theater?
I did vocal performance, so I did opera and choir and things like that. We do not have a very large theater program here in the Brownsville campus. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is up in Edinburgh.
Yeah. When I was visiting with a friend yesterday, and she told me that she had been to see opera, and she said, wow, I am a convert. She said, I had only heard opera on records. Mm-hmm. And she said, but I saw it live, and I'm there. She said, it is just awesome.
Oh, yes, it is grand to do. And luckily I was part of a couple of performances, and one of the last ones I did, actually, we did a production of Carmen, and we did it at the Edinburgh Performing Arts, big space, and then they wanted to do it in Brownsville, and we couldn't use the TSC Arts Center, so we actually did it at Camille. So we did our production of the opera there, and it was incredible. It was so cool.
And was it well attended?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So you get your biggest audiences for musicals generally.
Generally. There are some plays that are very big named, and people will come in and see. I think most of the time we do an Agatha Christie murder mystery.
Yeah,
we have a lot
that.
of people come in for that. There was,
but if you do like a true classic like Our Town or Arsenic and Old Lace, something like that, whether do those work?
Yes, yeah, I definitely think. I was trying to think of one of the other big ones we did. Can't remember recently. I'll circle back to it.
Are there any plays that you come across where you run into older plays? I would imagine where there's dialogue and you say, "Oh, we can't say that." Yeah. We can't do that. We can't do that line.
Yeah, and a lot of the publishing companies will put erratas or edits, and they can, a lot of them try to keep up to date. There are some that it's just, that's the classical text, and, you may have to use that. But yeah, we try to be aware of all that.
There's a case that I remember at Abilene Christian where I went to school, and they did big musicals every year. They were doing 1776 it's around the bicentennial time, so a long time ago. But it's Abilene Christian, So this is to show you what a ridiculous adaptation they felt forced to make because of who they were. And in the play, there was a lyric in the song that said, "It's hot as hell in Philadelphia." That was the lyric, hot as hell in Philadelphia. And they didn't want to say hot as hell because, they're a very conservative Christian school. So they changed it to the heats of pain in Pennsylvania. So on the one hand, you say, "Oh my God, really?" And then on the other hand, you say, "But it's a clever adaptation if you got to make it, if it's well done." So it's kind of fun at that level. So. I think, though, as a director, you're going to run into stuff like that where you have to be sensitive to the times, the audience. Time marches on, and we become more enlightened, and we make adjustments to that enlightenment, we hope.
Yeah, exactly. One of my recent directors who I worked with said that as performers and as artists, we need to bend like reeds in the wind. We need to be adaptable. We need to be ready to adapt to anything that happens, either as you're performing on stage or as you are presenting what you are doing to the community, because there's always going to be things changing. And just as a performer, as we continue to want to put this out to whoever's going to be enjoying it, we have to adjust.
Great advice. Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
Love talking to you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.